I'm Ben Sebastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge, Season 9, Episode 33 interview. We'll be talking with Nicholas George and discussing his latest novel, A Deadly Walk in Devon. So, let's get to know our guest. Nicholas George is the author of A Walk Through England mystery series featuring retired police detective Rick Chasen. Although a native Californian, Nicholas is an avid Anglophile, which comes from perhaps listening to hours and hours of Beatles records as a teenager, and he visits England regularly, usually to indulge in his other passion, country walking. Before taking up mystery writing, Nicholas oversaw communication programs for large corporate clients, including Lockheed, Merck, and Nissan. He lives in Pasadena, California with his husband. Nicholas, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Our pleasure. So I know it sounds like going from communications to writing a novel shouldn't be a stretch, but it is really a whole different ball game. So where did that passion come from? The passion to actually put pen to paper and write a novel?
Well, I'd always had the itch to write a novel, write fiction, way back even when I was young. But I had also a burning ambition to have a regular paycheck. So I
Oh,
went
those.
I went into more of a 9 to 5 kind of career,
Hmm.
which employed my what I think is probably one of my only skills, which is being able to write. And so that led into all of these communication management positions that you mentioned, and it was a good career. And during that time, I did try to write. I did try to make inroads into writing books and fiction, but it's just you really need to devote yourself to it full time. So I was not really able to do it. But when I retired a few years ago, I thought, okay, this is my chance. Now I can focus on this and also write about something that I love. So that's sort of how all this came about.
Nice. So can I ask about the walking the English countryside before we dive into the novel?
Sure. Yes,
Where,
that's also been a long time passion of mine is walking. I just love to get out and just walk around. And I'm not talking necessarily about hiking and putting on a backpack and scaling high mountains or anything, but
Mhm.
I do like just getting out in the countryside and seeing where my feet lead me. And even in Southern California here, in an urban area like Los Angeles, there are a lot of areas where you can do that. And I visited England many, many years ago and discovered that they have a fantastic system of trails throughout the country.
Oh, cool.
And, everywhere you look, there's places to walk, and it's just fascinating. Plus, I love England. So I've made it a habit to return to England on an annual basis and walk in a lot of these national trails, country footpaths, that type of thing. And I was on one a few years ago, and I mentioned I was on a group walk. I was on an organized walk that we had about 14 people walking in Devon, which is in the southwest part of the country. And I mentioned that I was a writer, and one of the other people on the walk said, "Nick, you ought to write a murder mystery that takes place on this walk." And I think she was kidding, but I thought about it. And when I got home, I was kind of stuck in the novel that I was working on at that time. So I thought, I love mysteries. Let me give that a try. So I sat down and I hammered out a first draft in 5 weeks. And I thought, this is a lot of fun. And it was
Wow.
not only fun to write the mystery, it was fun to kind of revisit the countryside that I had just been on, because I used that walk I had just been on as the basis for the book. And that then became what is now Deadly Walk in Devon.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah. And there are more to come. There's the next book in the series will be out next February, and then there's a third one after that that is at least definite right now.
So before we dive into book one, what should folks know about the series? And I know you teased the main character in your bio a bit, but what else do we need to know about either him or the series?
Well, when the series begins, my main character who I call Chase. His last name is Chasen, so that's his nickname, Chase.
Mhm.
And he's a retired police detective from San Diego, California. And he's not in a good place when the series begins. His long-term partner had recently passed on, and he's having a hard time dealing with the grief. And he's been kind of he's pulled back into himself, and he hasn't been socializing or anything. So he gets an invitation from this close friend of his, so a woman named Billy, who he's walked with. He's gone on walks with before, and she suggests they go on this walk in Devon. And she thinks it'll pull him out of himself and help him get over this grieving process he's going through. So that's sort of the state of things when the book begins.
Okay. And so it's an amateur sleuth, right?
He's an amateur, so he used to be a professional. He used to be a
Okay.
police detective, so he does have that background, but he's no longer, working in that capacity. So, it's in a long line of long tradition of both British and other mystery novels where you have an amateur sleuth,
Hmm.
and they somehow weasel their way into the professional investigation of a murder. Now
I'm,
you
I'm
can
glad
say,
you said it that way.
yeah, you can sort of say this is not believable or this would never happen, but you have to. There's a certain suspension of disbelief you have to
Well,
undertake there, and Chase is a former police detective,
Right.
but that gives him a certain amount of credibility rather than just being a caterer.
not quite Miss Marple, but
That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, a
Well,
little bit more than Miss Marple. I don't know.
so okay, so within the framework of a cozy then, and I'm glad you said the last thing the way you said it, because I was going to ask how in depth between the US and the British legal systems did you bother to go with this story?
um, well, I mean, I did do some research, and
Hmm.
you do. I'm also an avid reader of mysteries, so you do pick up on a lot of that as you read these British mysteries, and you do get a sense of the criminal justice system there. I did because another major character in my book is a county coroner or medical examiner. I did do some research into how they work, when they get involved in a case like this, and what's their procedure and that kind of thing. And so I, I, I have discussions with people at coroner offices in England, and so I did my research. I
Okay,
think it's fairly true to life. I haven't
nice,
heard anything that people say, "Oh, you got that terribly wrong." So
nice. All right, so Chase and Billy are going walking through Devon and plot happens. Can you tell us about what kicks off the investigation without spoiling it?
sure, sure, yeah. Um, well, it's a mystery, so there has to be a murder. And one
Hmm.
of the challenges I had is I knew I was going to base these books on walking tours or walking, and so I knew that I had to show some walking before the murder actually occurred,
Right.
and that was a challenge. And when I got my agent, she said that I needed to move the murder closer to the beginning of the book, and because in the earlier drafts, it happened maybe about midway into the book, which is not which is not taboo, but for a
Mhm.
first book in a series, that probably is not a good idea. So
Right,
I
right.
worked her. I worked with her to get the murder up. It's usually it probably comes in about 20% of the way into the story, but so at least you see some walking there, because once the murder occurs, well, all the walking stops. The police come in, and all the suspects have to remain where they are. So
Hmm.
that was one challenge I had to overcome. And then, of course, I had to decide, okay, who's going to be the victim, who's going to be the killer, and how is Chase going to help the police in determining um, who that is. What complicates it is this is a walking tour, so they're going from place to place. They're not in one place all the time. And when the murder occurs, it's on the walk, and all of the participants in the walk are walking at a distance from one another. So the big question is, well, how did anybody kill the murder victim? Because they weren't anywhere near them on the walk. So
Hmm.
how could that have happened? So in a way, it's sort of like a classic locked room mystery where it doesn't
Just about to
seem
ask.
could have happened, but it did happen. And so that's one of the puzzles that Chase has to figure out.
Nice. All right. Anything else about the novel you want us to know without spoiling it?
Well, as I mentioned, Chase is dealing with this grief of his partner passing recently, and he does meet someone on the walk who could be a future love interest, and that's just in the early stages in this book, and that then continues to develop in the next few books. So we'll see what happens with him.
Nice. And you just teased book two, Lethal Walk in Lakeland.
That's right.
What should
And,
folks know about it at this early? I know it's still early.
yeah, it'll be coming out in February, and that takes place in the Lake District of England, up in the north. So I go from the south to the north, and it's the same setup. Chase is going on this group walk, and Billy is with him. She's sort of his Watson. She's sort of his sidekick, and
Nice.
he helps. He confers with her, and she assists him in figuring out who the murderer is, that type of thing. So it's kind of a different setup though in the second book. It's I mean, I'm not going to go into too many details about the characters, but again, a challenge of writing these books is when I've gone on walks in England, generally it's a bunch of people who don't know one another. A bunch of people, you're strangers to one another, you're meeting each other for the first time. So if a murder occurs, as they do in my books, well, why would you want to kill a stranger? Why would one of the people on the walk want to kill the other if they just met them? And so that's a challenge I had to overcome. In the first book, I think I did a pretty good job of it. In the second book, it's a little bit easier because a good number of the people on the walk in the second book are members of the same family.
Okay.
So they have this familial connection between them. So it's a little different in that way.
Okay. So, can I ask if you've received any pushback, either professionally from the publishing side or publicly, having a gay lead in a cozy novel?
When I first got the idea for the book and started, searching around for an agent, I thought that would be a drawback. I thought that might be a turnoff for some people, and maybe it was. But on the flip side, it actually, I think, help distinguish it a bit. I mean, certainly there's a lot of gay fiction out here, and there's a lot of gay crime fiction. So it's not that unusual anymore. And I think it was a plus rather than a minus more than that. And I certainly I've not heard or received any pushback in any kind of apparent way that I've detected. And the book's been out now for about 5 months. And I've done a number of bookstore appearances and conferences and that kind of thing. And of course, I talk openly about the book and Chase and that kind of thing. I get nothing but positive feedback from people. So it's been a very good experience. I don't think I was overly concerned about having a gay character, but there was some there. That's completely gone.
Nice. Well, what about being a Californian writing about England?
Yes. That also concerned me because I don't live there, and they say write what you know, and I could probably write a mystery series based in California, and indeed I am writing another mystery series that does take place in California, but I do visit England quite a bit, and I think having a passion for a place does help you. I know quite a bit about England, and I know you want to get, when you have British characters in the book, as I do, of course, you want them to sound authentic, and you want to make sure you get the idioms right and the language right and that kind of thing. And so in the process of writing Deadly Walk in Devon, I did hire a editor in England to take a look at the manuscript just to make sure I got everything right.
Nice.
And are the people talking the way you would expect them to talk, and am I depicting the country and the customs and everything right? And he said, yeah, you did a good job. I think one of the few comments he had was, in the walk, it takes place on the coast in the north part of Devon, and you can look across the Bristol Channel and see Wales, the territory in the distance. And so that's mentioned in the book, and I think I call Wales a British territory. And he says, don't ever call Wales a British territory. They will get so angry if they, you have to refer to them the right way. So I did make that change that he recommended. But I think I got most everything else pretty good.
Nice. Nice. Baz, did you have questions?
Why San Diego?
Yeah,
San
good
Diego
question.
born and bred. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I come up with characters, I let them come to me. I let them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about them. I thought, okay, this is the character. Who is this character? And, I asked the character to introduce themselves to me. And so when I came up with Rick's character, I knew I wanted him to be a former policeman. San Diego came to me. Now it's not too far from where I live. I live
Right.
north of, but I don't know. It could have been San Francisco. It could have been. There wasn't anything in particular.
No, fair enough. I just was curious because Ben smiled as soon as you said it because he knew where I was, and I'm like, okay.
And Chase does still live in that area. He lives in North San Diego County in Temecula. So he does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but again,
excellent.
there's no particular reason why I'm doing that.
Just went on California, went right there.
That's sort of it. That's sort of it.
Plus tacos,
So
I do have another question though before you slip in there. Is it set in current times or is it a historically placed some?
No, it's present day. I did. That's a whole other layer of complexity I didn't want to get into. Where putting in a certain place and time. I didn't. That makes it interesting. But no, it's current day.
Okay, yeah. I'm just wondering because the trouble I have writing current day is there's so much tech that's in everybody's faces that it's hard to write characters that aren't doing this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Which is really boring from an author standpoint. So I think one of the suspensions of disbelief is when we write in modern days and we eschew writing about that. It's like, okay, that's not really, So, I mean, if you're doing this with current technology being out there and the time, does that play a factor? And how did you wrestle with that monster?
That's a good question, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I grew up on these golden age murder mysteries from England with Agatha Christie and Dorothy Sayers and all of them. And of course, you didn't have cell phones back then, and you didn't have Google, and you didn't have all that stuff. And it made it much more, in a way, it made it much more rich because the detection had to be much more hands-on and had to be more physical, and you couldn't just look everything up online.
And people were much more sociable during that period.
That's right. So, so you have to acknowledge that. So yes, there are cell phones in the book, and there are apps that people look at things and stuff like that. But still, the art of detection, the art of figuring something out, is a mental thing that you have to put clues together, and sometimes you have to go somewhere physically to see how things are. You can't do everything virtually.
Right.
So I try not to do that as much as possible, while still acknowledging that there is modern technology and it does make things different today than it used to. In the third book in the series, which I'm revising right now, there's a character, a young woman, who is just she looks up all her fellow walkers on Google to see what their social media profile is, and that plays a role in the story. What she finds out, and so I try to work that into the story that way. But I don't try to let modern technology and the way we communicate these days get in the way of a real good mystery.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
So I was going to ask, and only because now thinking crime, I'm thinking timeline. He still lives in San Diego, but he's encountering murders in England. How much time is between each book?
Between each book, I don't get into that too much.
Okay.
Between the first book and the second book, I would say maybe a year or 10 months.
Okay.
So, because he starts this relationship with someone in the first book, and then that continues in the second book. And so they have been having this relationship long distance. They've been having it through Zoom calls and that kind of thing. And they're kind of ready to take it to the next stage.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. Very nice. Is there anything else you want folks to know, either about the series or book one, that we didn't think to ask?
No, you covered it pretty well. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've left out. No, other than I think people will enjoy it. It's a good read, and it's a good puzzle. It'll let your mind kind of get a workout.
There you go.
Perfect. All right. Are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Sure.
Take it away,
Okay.
guys.
Well, in this year of diving deeper, what is your favorite writing snack or drink?
I try not to eat too much when I'm writing. I mean, at least when I'm writing at my keyboard. Um, in terms of snacks or drinks, because I usually write in the morning. Morning is my writing time, and I will probably just have had coffee. Coffee is probably my writing drink because it keeps your mind
Keeps the
sort of
little
hard.
gray cells. Well, or it suppresses the tiredness is what it does, kind of thing. All right. What books did you grow up reading?
Well, I think I mentioned I got hooked on mysteries when I was a kid. When I say a kid, maybe 11 or 12. And I remember reading Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, which is one of her greatest books. And I was just dazzled by the book. I thought, oh, this is, my God, this is wonderful. And that's when I sort of got the bug. I thought, I'd love to do this, write stuff like this. And so I read it. I ended up reading all of her work. I've read all of Agatha Christie's novels, and a lot of her contemporaries, as I said. Dorothy Sayers is another big one, and then I got into a lot of the American crime writers. Certainly the classics like Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, and just made this a habit through the years. I have to say, another series of books I liked when I was a kid. Now, I was a young gay boy, keep in mind. So I got hooked on Nancy Drew books, and they were actually quite well written for what they were. They really were, and they kind of pulled you in and had interesting characters and plots and everything like that. So that was sort of another inspiration, I would say.
Okay, excellent. All right, who's been the biggest supporter of your writing?
Biggest supporter. Well, my husband Bert has always been a big supporter of. He better be a big.
You gotta acknowledge the husband.
He better. I love it.
This is where he leaned into the podcast.
No. And my friends and anybody I dealt with, and I tell them, okay, I'm writing this book, and here's what it's about, and they usually get pretty jazzed about it. And I've been in a few book groups, writing groups rather, with with other authors, struggling writers, and we're all supportive of one another. We all try to help whenever we can. And my agent has been great. She's just a treasure. I'm glad I found her. Her name's Michelle, and so she's been a big cheerleader for mine too. I think more to the point, I've never had anybody discouraging me from it. I've never had anybody saying, "Oh, don't try that, and it's a waste of time."
Well, see, if you were in England, that is an English thing, is to discourage you from trying it. So you're in the right place. You're in the right country. All right. Are you a morning person or a night owl? I think you already said this.
Oh, I'm a morning person. I definitely am a morning person, and I'm very ritualized. So I get up at the same time every day usually, and then I go to sleep every night at the same time. So that works out well. But no, I'm a morning person, and my husband is exactly opposite. He's a night owl. So that kind of works in a way. So we each have our kind of quiet time away from each other.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. What is your favorite hobby outside of writing?
Well, as I mentioned, I love walking. I don't know if I'd call it a hobby. That's sort of an activity I like to do. My other passion, which is if this other series I'm working on ever gets into print, is music. I love popular music. I'm not a musician, but I love listening to music, and I'm a treasure trove of music trivia and pop music trivia. So Years ago I
So
was
that
on
piece of the pie in Trivial Pursuit was your favorite.
that. Well, that's right. It's the whatever color that particular piece of the pie was. That was my favorite. And people say, "Oh, God, Nick's going to get this one."
Right.
Anything's about music. And years ago, I appeared on. Now this is going to date me, although I was on there. They had a TV game show called Name That Tune, and I was.
Oh
on
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's sort of my passion. I love music.
Okay. Well, has writing and publishing a book changed the way you see yourself?
Yeah, I guess it has. Seeing myself as a published author is a kind of a nice thing, and to be in the company of other authors, I've really enjoyed that, and to be able to speak to them as a peer rather than just another reader has been very nice. Other than that, I don't think I don't seem very different to myself or to other people that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Well, if you were to write a spin-off about a side character, which one would you pick?
Well, there's only one other character in the book who's a continuing character. Well, there's two others actually, but Billy, who is Chase's walking partner, I could maybe see doing a spin-off of that, or perhaps a spin-off of, I don't know, one of the police officials that he meets in some of these cases. That could be done. I haven't really given that too much thought.
Okay.
It's
Well,
a possibility.
there you go. There you go. All right. Have you ever traveled as research for a book? I think we know this answer.
Oh yeah. Well, that's one of the nice things about being a professional writer, is that I can write off my trips to England now as research.
Well, there you go.
And in a way,
Nice.
they are research. I mean, I'm going.
Yeah.
The fourth book in the series is going to take place in Shropshire, which is a county in England, in the middle of England, and I'm going there next year, specifically to research it. I'm going to be, visiting some of the towns and the trails and that kind of thing. So, but a lot of the journeys I've made to England can be seen as research. I use a lot of what I've seen there and integrated books. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. And finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a novel?
Well, there's stages to this. There's when you finish your first. Yes,
right.
My first draft. Okay, let's go out for dinner or something like that. And then there's when you finish your final draft. That's also very, very
Exciting.
good. And for this book, many stages. Trying to get an agent, of course, is very, very formidable. It's hard. And so when I got an agent, that was an occasion for celebrating. And then when I got the book deal, that was a big occasion for celebrating. So I was able to do that. So there were a lot of celebrations along the way. I don't know if there's any particular way I celebrate. I like a good dinner or that kind of thing.
Right. All right. Well,
Nice.
excellent. Well, you made it through the list.
Mm-hmm.
Bravo.
So, do you have any more stops on the book promotion tour or anything online people need to tune into?
Well, they can go on my website, which is nicholasgeorgeauthor.com. And I do have some of the interviews I've conducted posted there, so they can take a look at those. Coming up, actually, that'll be after this appears, so I can't mention that. Not too much coming up that I'm aware of. Yeah, nothing. I think the paperback version of Deadly Walk in Devon will be coming out in December. So
Yes.
I think there'll be kind of a renewed push
During that time. Yeah.
but
And-
that'll all be on my website.
And the pre-order for book 2 is up now, A Lethal Walk in Lakeland.
I think you can pre-order it now, I believe.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom?
Oh, I wish I did have words of wisdom.
He's all, this wasn't enough.
No,
All
thank
right.
you very much for talking to me.
It's been our pleasure, and we'd like to extend a huge thank you to you, Nicholas George, for joining us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye now.
Oh, what's that?
Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.